Hey y'all, my name is Susan Sparks and I'm the senior pastor here at Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York City. We are a diverse community brought together by faith. We hope that you enjoy our service today. last week, some really creepy and bizarre things happened. In the bizarre category, the temperatures here in New York City swung 40 degrees in a 24-hour period. Did y'all remember that? Did you notice? I mean, how could you not, right? I mean, I think it was Thursday that it went from like the 20s to the 60s. I went out for lunch and there was a guy walking by the church in like a wool turtleneck and shorts. It was just bizarre. In the creepy category, the New England Patriots beat the Rams and they're going to the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, Alex. My sister. Moment of silence. Moment of silence. But creepy. And then, of course, there's the creepy and bizarre category, because last Sunday night, we had a blood red moon. Did any of you guys see it? Did you literally see it? Anybody literally see it? Really? You stayed up that late. I love it. Sorry. No, I'm talking in general here. I mean, we tried hard, but it was after midnight when this thing actually occurred, but it was incredible. I mean, it was late, but Toby and I were in such a trauma over the Patriots that we were up watching, and we were actually watching it online. There was a live stream of it that we were watching, and it was a blood red moon. Actually, it was called a super wolf blood red moon, which makes it even more creepy and bizarre. It was called a wolf moon because it was the first full moon in January, and apparently in ancient times, in January is when the wolves howled the loudest. And it was called a supermoon because, in addition to being a full moon, this full moon coincided with the moon's closest orbit to Earth, so it appeared huge. And in addition to all this other stuff, it was called a blood moon because it was also a full lunar eclipse on top of all this. So, all of a sudden the Earth comes through and blocks the sunlight on the moon, and it gives it this creepy, bizarre red color. I mean, watching this thing, I couldn't help but think about how scary a blood red moon must have been for people thousands of years ago who didn't understand lunar patterns. I knew the thing was coming. I understood why it was happening, and I still found it to be creepy. I mean, of course, ancient peoples would take that as some kind of omen or sign. Like in the Bible. 3 different books of the Bible mention blood red moons. The book of Joel that we just heard, the book of Acts, and the book of Revelations. And not surprisingly, all 3 link blood moons to something creepy and bizarre, a warning about end times. The book of Revelation 6:12. And I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And Joel, you just heard, the sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And Acts simply quotes Joel again, talking about the moon will turn to blood on the day of the coming of the Lord. I mean, I have to say, it's a pretty appropriate image for end times, when things start to fall apart, when the world teeters into chaos, when brother and sister turn against one another, when all seems lost. I mean, these days, I don't think we need to look in the sky to see a blood red moon. All we have to do is look at the newspaper. A gunman barricades himself in a SunTrust bank in Florida and kills 5 people. A 21-year-old man in Louisiana kills his parents and 3 other people. 3 people were shot to death in Washington, D.C. by a killer who's still at large. A blood red moon. And that was just last week. We don't have to look far to see the signs of what one could interpret as a blood moon. I mean, how about the fact that last week somebody paid $238 million for an apartment on Park Avenue South? Talking about end times. Look, I mean, while the sale may not seem ominous on its face, crazy, maybe not ominous, consider it within the widening income gap of our society. Do you know, all told, today the world has 2,200 billionaires. 2,200 billionaires. And last year, the wealth of those billionaires increased by 15%, and the wealth of the rest of the world's poorest 50% decreased by 12%. Bam. 2,200 billionaires. $238 million for an apartment on Central Park South, and 13 million children in this country don't have enough food. That's a blood red moon coming right there. Or what about global warming? I mean, you want to talk about some creepy signs of end times, and it's not just melting glaciers. A study released last week confirmed that global warming actually contributes to the increase in global migration and immigration and the increase of war. Why? Because global warming has brought widespread drought. And with drought, people face food and water shortage, which means they move, which means the folks that are in the place where they move feel threatened, which causes conflict. You don't have to look in a telescope to see a blood red moon these days. It's right in front of us. Aren't y'all glad you came to church this morning? Isn't this great to hear this inspiring message of hope? Well, brothers and sisters, buried in this ominous message is a message of hope. And all we have to do is go back to the book of Joel to find it. As we know, in verse 31, it says, "One sign of the end times is that the sun will turn to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord." But 3 verses before that, another sign is mentioned. In verse 28, God says, "I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions." In the midst of this creepy, bizarre darkness and blood red moon, God gives the gift of dreams and visions. And if you remember anything about dreams in the Bible, you will remember that dreams are what save people. Remember the wise men who were saved when they were told in a dream not to return to Herod? Or what about when the Lord spoke to Mordecai, the father of Esther, and talked about how she would save her people and herself in a dream? Abraham was given the great covenant in a dream. God spoke to Jacob in his dream about the ladder and his inheritance. God gave Solomon saving wisdom in a dream. God gave Paul a call to preach in a dream. In the midst of the blood-red moon, God gave his people dreams of the things that could be, of the things that will be. Now, some of you may be thinking, "Oh, great, the gift of a dream." Yawn. I know in modern Western culture, we don't give much heed to dreams. You know, we kind of roll our eyes, "Oh, it's new agey, useless stuff." We've evolved. We don't need dreams. We've mastered space travel. We can split an atom. We can predict when a red blood moon is going to happen. What do we need a dream for? If you only look at dreams as a primitive attempt to explain the unknown, yeah, you're probably right. We don't need them. But dreams are bigger than that. Dreams are our ability as human beings to persevere in the face of hardship. Dreams they represent our capacity to see the possible in the impossible. I mean, think about Dr. King's words. I have a dream. I have a dream. Words that showed the world what was possible in a time where it seemed completely impossible. And Jesus did the exact same thing. He shared things that were possible in a time where they seemed impossible. And a classic example of that is his very first sermon in Nazareth, where he said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good tidings to the afflicted. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and open the prisons to those who are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." A radical reordering, a profound renewal, a revitalization of life. And as followers of Christ, this should be our dream too. Today after the service, as we said in the announcements, it's our annual meeting for Madison Avenue Baptist Church. And in my written annual report, I got kind of artsy. I couldn't help it. And I started quoting Walden Pond by Henry David Thoreau. But I thought it was fitting. And Thoreau said this: "If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them." If you've built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That's where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. Brothers and sisters, that's what this church has done for many, many years, and especially in the past few years. I mean, just look at this Right Hand of Fellowship. 7 new members joining our family. And that's in addition to our new babies, the new generation coming in. I mean, talk about putting foundations under a dream. We as members of Madison Avenue Baptist Church, but more importantly, as human beings and as Christians, have been given an inheritance of visions and dreams, castles in the air. And even when those dreams seem eclipsed by a blood-red moon, they're not. They're right where they're supposed to be. And this is our time to make sure that we put the foundations under them. And we do it in a spirit of hope, because at some point, the shadow on that moon will pass, and the dreams will shine back through. And it is then that we too will be able to bring good tidings to the afflicted, and bind up the brokenhearted, and proclaim liberty to the captives, and open the prisons to those who are bound, and proclaim the year of the Lord. It's about God's gift of seeing the possible. "For I will pour out my Spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters, they will prophesy. And your old men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions. And even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my Spirit in those days, and I will show wonders in the heavens." And the people said, Amen.
Take the world, but give me Jesus. All its joys are but a name, but his love abides forever, through eternal years the same. Oh, the height and depth of mercy, oh, the length and breadth of love, oh, the fullness of redemption, pledge of endless life above, pledge of endless life above. Take the world, but give me Jesus, sweetest comfort of my soul, with my Savior watching o'er me, I can sing though billows roll. Oh, the height and depth of mercy, oh, the length and breadth of love, oh, the fullness of redemption, pledge of endless life above, pledge of endless life above. Take the world, but give me Jesus. Let me view his constant smile. Then throughout my pilgrim journey, light will cheer me all the while. Take the world, but give me Jesus. In his cross my trust shall be, filled with clearer, brighter vision. Face to face my Lord I see. Oh, the height and depth of mercy, oh, the length and breadth of love, oh, the fullness of redemption, pledge of endless life above. Take the world, but give me Jesus.
And until we see you again, may God bless you and keep you. May God bring peace to your heart and strength to your feet. And as we leave through those doors, let us always remember that no matter how hard times get, how hard difficulties we face, we were given the vision and the power to dream, even in times of a blood-red moon. Amen. Thanks for joining us. Madison Avenue Baptist Church is located at 31st and Madison Avenue in New York City. Our website is www.mabcnyc.org.